There is something uncanny you carry, something others can sense the instant you step into a room. It isn't visible, it isn't tangible, yet it lingers in the air like a subtle current that only a few truly attuned souls can perceive. A rare aura, one that only genuine empaths possess. What if this unseen energy could explain both your magnetic presence and your hidden fragility? In the private archives of Carl Jung, there lies research that attempts to answer exactly that question. And what he uncovered is as unsettling as it is illuminating. Jung's hidden writings reveal that true empaths do not merely feel emotions. They radiate what he described as the wounded healer frequency. This is no ordinary sensitivity, it is an energetic signature shaped in the furnace of pain and transmuted into something remarkably powerful. Imagine fire reshaping raw metal. That is the alchemy behind this aura. It does not emerge from natural innocence or simple kindness, but from a deeper psychological process that very few ever attain. In his private notes, Jung detailed how this rare empathic aura functions on multiple dimensions at once. It is capable of healing others merely through presence, without a word spoken. Yet paradoxically, it also becomes a magnet for both light and shadow, attracting forces that can uplift or, just as easily, unravel the empath. The most startling revelation: Jung realized that when empaths fail to grasp the true nature of this aura, it becomes perilous. Unseen, it acts like a lighthouse in the dark, calling in energy vampires while at the same time quietly draining the empath from within. So where does this leave us? To explore further is to descend into Jung's most profound insights about the invisible energy field surrounding empaths, and to uncover why recognizing this aura marks the difference between remaining a wounded healer or stepping into the sovereignty of a conscious one. Here lies the uncomfortable truth Jung discovered, a truth modern psychology still resists acknowledging. Your empathic aura was never a gift handed down at birth. Instead, it is a psychological survival mechanism, refined, transformed, and made sacred through what can only be called traumatic alchemy. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But for empaths, the path to authenticity demands something more. It requires first understanding why the nervous system developed such extraordinary sensitivity in the first place. This did not occur by chance. It was adaptive, an ingenious response to an environment that demanded vigilance. Consider this through Jung's lens of psychological development. Time and again he observed that empaths were shaped in childhood landscapes where emotional survival hinged on hyper-awareness. They learned to read micro-expressions long before they could decipher written words. They cultivated an inner radar tuned to emotional danger, because safety depended entirely on anticipating the storm before it broke. And that is why you learned to read micro-expressions before you could read words. You developed radar for emotional danger because your safety depended on anticipating the emotional weather around you. But here's what Jung realized that most therapists overlook, and it changes everything. This survival mechanism didn't simply help you cope with childhood trauma. It reshaped the very architecture of your mind. It literally rewired your brain to operate at frequencies most people will never access. Your mirror neurons became hyperactive, responding like finely tuned instruments. Your limbic system grew extraordinarily sensitive, lighting up with every emotional ripple around you. In effect, Your entire nervous system evolved into what can only be described as an emotional antenna, constantly scanning, receiving, and transmitting signals. Modern neuroscience has only recently begun to validate what Jung intuited decades earlier. For instance, Dr. Elaine Aron's groundbreaking studies on highly sensitive persons reveal that empaths process sensory information with far greater depth. Brain imaging shows heightened activity in regions tied to awareness, emotion, and empathy, precisely where most people operate at only a fraction of capacity. But Jung went further. He understood that this neurological difference doesn't stay locked within the brain. It generates a perceptible energetic field, an aura that others can feel even without realizing it. And yet, that's not the most extraordinary revelation. The real breakthrough came when Jung discovered that this empathic aura operates as what he termed psychological radar. It doesn't merely receive energy passively, it transmutes it, reshaping raw emotional data through unconscious alchemical processes. Imagine walking into a crowded room. While others notice the chatter and surface expressions, empaths engage in what I call energetic archaeology. You dig beneath appearances, intuitively unearthing emotional truths people keep hidden, even from themselves. Here's how this unfolds step by step, through the lens of Jung's collective unconscious. Stage 1. The energetic scan. Your empathic aura automatically tunes in to what Jung labeled feeling-toned complexes, the unconscious emotional patterns driving people's actions. You detect grief that hasn't been mourned, anger shoved into silence, fear masked by bravado. Stage 2. Unconscious absorption. Because your psyche became permeable as a survival adaptation, you begin drawing in these emotional currents without even choosing to. Jung described this as participation mystique, a deep, unconscious identification with another person's psychological state. Stage 3. The alchemical process. Here is where Jung's vision was revolutionary. Your empathic nervous system doesn't merely absorb energy, it transforms it through what he called the transcendent function. Without conscious effort, you convert raw emotional material into insight, clarity, even healing potential. This explains why people often feel lighter, calmer, or more whole simply after being in your presence, even when you haven't spoken a word. Your aura has taken in fragments of their shadow, metabolized them, and reflected back a more integrated version of their truth. But Jung also issued a warning, one that carries profound weight. This process is not automatic salvation. It only works when empaths recognize and consciously engage with their alchemical nature. Otherwise, instead of becoming psychological alchemists, they risk devolving into what he called emotional sponges, absorbing pain endlessly, yet never transforming it. But here's where Jung's research becomes truly alarming. Your rare empathic aura generates what he termed archetypal attraction patterns, magnetic forces that pull both healers and predators toward you with equal intensity. It is as if your presence operates like a signal, invisible yet irresistible, calling forth energies from both ends of the spectrum. Jung identified several archetypes that are unconsciously drawn to empathic auras. First, the wounded child archetype. Individuals carrying unresolved childhood trauma feel a powerful resonance with your energy. They are magnetized to you because your aura radiates the promise of unconditional acceptance, the very nourishment they were once denied. Then comes the shadow projector. These are people who have disowned pieces of themselves, anger, grief, desire, and instead of facing their own darkness, they unconsciously place it upon you. Your aura becomes a silent container for emotions they refuse to acknowledge. And then, the most draining of all, the energy vampire. Jung described these as psychological parasites, people whose empathic capacities never fully develop. Lacking the ability to generate emotional nourishment from within, they have learned survival through extraction, feeding on the energy of others, especially empaths who radiate abundance. Yet Jung also emphasized that not all who are drawn to you come with shadowed intentions. There are positive archetypes as well. The conscious seeker approaches not to consume, but to resonate. These individuals recognize in your aura a mirror of their own inner work. They are drawn to grow beside you, not at your expense. Then there is the authentic self. These are people on the threshold of embracing their full humanity, magnetized by the freedom your aura represents, the unspoken permission to feel deeply, to live without shame. The danger lies in what I call archetypal confusion. Your aura attracts both the wounded and the awakened, the takers and the co-creators. But without conscious discernment, you risk pouring yourself into those who are not ready, draining your vitality in futile attempts to transform what refuses transformation. Have you noticed how you seem to attract both the profoundly spiritual and the deeply troubled? If so, you are already experiencing what Jung referred to as the wounded healer constellation. Now the truth becomes clearer. Your empathic aura carries within it both immense potential for healing and the profound vulnerability of being consumed. Jung understood that the wounded healer archetype does not heal others by transferring personal energy. Instead, healing arises through what he called resonant frequency healing. Your aura vibrates at frequencies that awaken dormant capacities in others. Picture this. When someone burdened by unprocessed trauma steps into your field, they undergo what Jung named constellation activation. In your presence, something stirs. Their own healer archetype is awakened, not because you have given away your strength, but because you embody the living proof that wounds can be transmuted into wisdom. But Jung uncovered a sobering limit to this process. The wounded healer can only catalyze healing in others to the degree that they have confronted and integrated their own shadow. If your own trauma remains unresolved, your aura becomes clouded, contaminated by what I call bleeding energy. And this is why your empathic aura carries both the capacity for profound healing and the vulnerability to being consumed. Instead of inspiring healing, you unconsciously invite others to wound you in the very same patterns you have yet to resolve. This is one of the hidden paradoxes of the empathic path. The very sensitivity that makes you magnetic can also make you vulnerable. And this is precisely why empaths so often find themselves entangled with narcissists, emotional vampires, and people who seem to require endless rescuing. Your unhealed wounds generate what could be described as an electromagnetic signature, a silent frequency that inevitably attracts those who will reenact your original trauma over and over until those buried experiences are finally integrated. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." For empaths, this truth cuts especially deep. Each person you attract, whether comforting or corrosive, is showing you a mirror of your own unconscious patterns. The people who drain you, they reveal the very ways you continue to drain yourself. The ones who seem incapable of receiving your love, they reflect your own unresolved struggles, with self-love. It can feel painful, but within this mirroring lies the key to transformation. The alchemical solution, according to Jung, was what he described as conscious suffering, a courageous willingness to feel your own wounds fully without repression or denial. By embracing them completely, those wounds no longer remain raw openings for others to exploit. Instead, they are transmuted into wisdom. This is the turning point. When you undertake this inner work, your aura shifts from the wounded healer frequency into what can only be called the sovereign healer frequency. You still radiate empathy, but now it is anchored in wholeness rather than woundedness, in strength rather than survival. And here is where Jung's understanding becomes truly revolutionary. He recognized that the empathic aura functions as what he called a psychological mirror. Rather than giving away your energy, you reflect back to others their own capacity for consciousness or their own resistance to it. Jung observed that those who are conscious and integrated feel peace in the presence of empaths. Your aura reflects their inner light, amplifying what already exists within them. This creates what I call recognition resonance, that profound joy of being seen and accepted for who they authentically are. But unconscious individuals often respond quite differently. Around awakened empaths, they feel disturbed, unsettled, even threatened, because your aura reflects back the shadow material they are desperately trying to avoid. This creates what Jung termed shadow projection anxiety. They may lash out, attempt to dim your light, or assign blame for the discomfort they cannot bear to confront within themselves. This mirror effect explains why empaths encounter such extreme reactions from others. Some are drawn to you irresistibly, like moths circling a flame. Others recoil or even attack, unable to tolerate the truths your presence awakens in them. Yet the conscious mirror response is entirely different. When those committed to their own inner work meet your empathic aura, they feel uplifted, inspired, and nourished. They may say things like, "I feel so calm and clear around you," or "You remind me of who I really am." These individuals energize you in return because the exchange is mutual. They are not only receiving from you, they are also reflecting your own light back to you, the unconscious mirror response. When someone who is actively avoiding their shadow comes into contact with your empathic aura, they feel unsettled, triggered, and defensive. Instead of acknowledging the discomfort within themselves, they may turn it outward, criticizing your sensitivity, dismissing you as too much, or provoking emotional reactions that lower your frequency to match theirs. These encounters are draining because, at a deeper level, such individuals are attempting to pull you into their unconscious state, using conflict as a shield to avoid facing what your presence is quietly reflecting back at them. Then comes the predatory mirror response. When energy vampires encounter your empathic aura, they immediately sense an opportunity. They recognize, often unconsciously, your heightened capacity for emotional processing. And so, they begin to strategize ways to make you their emotional regulator. These are the people who consistently trauma dump, manufacture endless crises, or position themselves as helpless victims in need of your constant rescue. It is not affection or respect that drives them toward you, but survival, the attempt to siphon the energy they cannot generate within themselves. Understanding this mirror effect is crucial. It explains why boundary setting feels so profoundly difficult for empaths, because when you set a boundary with an unconscious person, you are not merely protecting your own energy, you are, in essence, refusing to enable their avoidance of shadow work. Your no confronts them with the very truth they are desperate to escape. But here is Jung's most profound insight about empathic auras. You are not just processing isolated individual emotions. You're also connected to what he called the collective unconscious, the vast shared psychic field that holds the memories, fears, dreams, and aspirations of all humanity. Jung discovered that empaths act as what I call collective antennas. Without realizing it, you tune into emotional frequencies that extend far beyond the personal, absorbing signals from groups, communities, even global patterns of consciousness. This is why you may suddenly feel inexplicable grief during a world tragedy, heightened anxiety during social unrest, or extreme exhaustion in crowded spaces where countless individuals are carrying unprocessed emotional weight. Your empathic aura is not simply reacting to one person at a time. It is registering archetypal energies, sensing the collective shadow, humanity's unhealed traumas, its suppressed fears, and the exiled parts of consciousness society refuses to face. This connection to the collective unconscious is both your greatest gift and your greatest burden. On one hand, it grants access to universal wisdom, archetypal guidance, and the profound ability to help heal wounds that are larger than any individual. On the other hand, it exposes you to emotional currents that are not personally yours, yet feel overwhelmingly real, as if you were carrying the weight of the world on your own nervous system. Jung believed that empaths hold a pivotal role in collective healing precisely because they can feel what most others have numbed themselves against. You serve as early warning systems for eruptions of the collective shadow, for wars, social upheavals, environmental crises, and cultural breakdowns. Long before these disturbances appear in the physical world, your empathic aura registers them as vibrations of unease, grief, or fear. But Jung also issued a warning. Empaths must learn to distinguish between what belongs to them personally and what belongs to the collective. Without this discernment, they risk what Jung called psychic inflation, the unconscious assumption of responsibility for wounds that belong to humanity as a whole. If you've ever felt paralyzed by the weight of world events or overwhelmed by emotions you knew were not entirely your own, you have already experienced this. And if you recognize yourself in this description, you may find yourself whispering the words, "I feel the world's pain." Here's Jung's framework for transforming your empathic aura from a state of vulnerability into true sovereignty. This is what I call the aura method, grounded in his principles of individuation. The first step is simple yet profound. Acknowledge your energetic nature. Jung emphasized that integration is impossible without recognition. You cannot work with what you refuse to see. And yet most empaths live largely unconscious of their own uniqueness, unaware that they are operating with a different kind of neurological wiring and heightened energetic sensitivity. Start by acknowledging that your empathy is not merely emotional. It is deeply energetic. You are literally absorbing and processing information through subtle channels that most people cannot access. What some dismiss as too sensitive is not weakness at all, but a sophisticated form of consciousness Jung referred to as differentiated perception. To harness it, begin practicing awareness. Track your energy levels throughout the day. Pay attention to which people, places, and activities leave you feeling uplifted and which ones leave you feeling drained. Jung described this practice as energy accounting, becoming conscious of how your empathic capacities are being used and, in some cases, abused. The next step is to understand your archetypal patterns. Jung believed that every individual operates through archetypes, but empaths are especially vulnerable to what I call caretaker complexes. These are unconscious beliefs that your worth is tied to healing others. Consider, do you feel guilty when you're not helping someone? Do you attract those who constantly need fixing? Do you carry the weight of responsibility for emotions that aren't yours? These patterns signal that your empathic gifts are being governed by unconscious complexes rather than conscious choice. Jung's solution to this was the practice of active imagination, consciously entering into dialogue with these archetypal patterns. By engaging them directly, you begin to uncover their origins, understand their influence, and eventually transform the way they express through you. Another crucial step is to reclaim your energetic boundaries. Jung recognized that healthy boundaries are not rigid walls that shut others out. They are what I call conscious membranes, flexible yet firm, capable of allowing love and authenticity in while keeping manipulation and depletion out. For empaths, this work must extend beyond behavior into the energetic realm. It means learning to sense when your aura is being invaded, when your vitality is leaking away, and having reliable practices to restore your energetic integrity. To support this, Jung advocated psychological hygiene, regular practices that cleanse absorbed energies and help you return to your authentic frequency. This can include meditation, immersion in nature, creative expression, or any ritual that reconnects you to who you are beneath all the emotional imprints you've unconsciously absorbed. And finally, you must activate conscious empathy. This was Jung's ultimate goal, the ability to feel deeply with others without losing yourself in them. Conscious empathy allows you to hold space for another person's truth while remaining firmly rooted in your own. It is the state where empathy becomes not a burden, but a gift of sovereignty. This is empathy that serves consciousness rather than unconscious compulsions. It is the difference between being ruled by sensitivity and mastering it. Conscious empathy means you no longer get swept away by every emotional current. You choose when and how to engage your empathic gifts instead of being at their mercy. It is the ability to witness suffering without becoming consumed by it, to offer healing presence without depleting yourself in the process. And reaching this level of empathic mastery requires what Jung called the transcendent function. The transcendent function is the capacity to hold opposites in awareness without collapsing into one side or the other. You can be both compassionate and boundaried, both open and protected, both exquisitely sensitive and unshakably strong. When you integrate these principles, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your empathic aura shifts, evolving from what I call the wounded healer frequency into the sovereign healer frequency. Jung observed this transformation in his most advanced patients, those who had learned to integrate their wounds rather than deny them. The sovereign empath still carries all the heightened perception and sensitivity of the wounded healer, but these gifts now operate under conscious choice rather than unconscious compulsion. The energetic shift is profound. Your aura becomes more radiant, yet at the same time more contained. Instead of leaking energy indiscriminately, you now radiate what Jung described as integrated wholeness, an energetic signature that naturally inspires others to engage in their own inner work, rather than depending on you to process their emotions for them. People still feel your empathic gifts, but the quality of the exchange changes. What once created enabling resonance now becomes empowering resonance. Your very presence awakens in others their own capacity for healing. No longer do they unconsciously lean on your emotional labor. Instead, they begin to tap into their own strength, encouraged by the wholeness reflected in your aura. And this shift also alters your attraction pattern. Jung noted that sovereign empaths call forth an entirely new constellation of archetypes. Energy vampires and emotional parasites gradually fall away because your field no longer emits the available for draining frequency. Instead, you start drawing to yourself what Jung called individuated souls, people who have confronted their own shadows, integrated their own wounds, and can meet you at a higher level of consciousness. These relationships feel radically different, mutually nourishing, balanced, and sustaining. Both individuals contribute to the energetic exchange, and the healing process becomes almost effortless. Perhaps most remarkably, Jung observed that sovereign empaths often facilitate healing without any conscious effort at all. Their integrated aura becomes what I call a healing field, a vibrational presence that naturally activates growth and transformation in others. This occurs because you are no longer attempting to heal from a place of fracture. You are no longer offering pieces of yourself as sacrifice. Instead, you are healing from wholeness. Your aura now radiates the very possibility of integration. It shows others wordlessly that pain can be transmuted into wisdom, that sensitivity can become strength, and that wounds can evolve into gifts. Jung believed that empaths, when they reach this level, serve an essential function in what he called the collective individuation process, humanity's ongoing evolution toward greater consciousness, deeper integration, and a more awakened state of being. Your rare empathic aura isn't just a personal gift, it's a collective necessity, a light that shines not only for you, but for those who have forgotten how to feel. In a world where so many people have become disconnected from their emotional truth, distracted, numbed, or buried under the weight of survival, empaths serve as what I call consciousness bridges. You help others remember their own capacity for authentic feeling, showing them that sensitivity is not weakness, but a profound doorway to connection. Yet Jung warned of a hidden trap along this path, what he called the savior complex. The savior complex is the unconscious belief that you are responsible for healing everyone. On the surface, it may look noble, but in reality, it undermines true collective healing because it fosters dependency instead of empowerment. Jung understood that the true mission of empaths is not to rescue, but to model what he described as conscious feeling, the ability to feel deeply while still remaining grounded in your own center. Imagine how powerful it is when someone sees in your aura the possibility of entering emotional depth without collapsing into chaos. Doesn't that offer permission they didn't know they needed? This is where the ripple effect begins. Jung observed that when a single person in a family system, a friendship circle, or even an entire community reaches this level of empathic sovereignty, it creates what I call consciousness ripples that extend far beyond the individual. Your integrated aura becomes a silent invitation, encouraging others to stop numbing their emotions and to start processing them consciously. And this, Jung noted, is how collective healing truly happens, not by one empath carrying the unbearable weight of everyone's pain, but by conscious individuals demonstrating that it is possible to feel everything and remain whole. The evolutionary role of empaths is profound. Jung believed that empaths represent a new stage in the unfolding of human consciousness. Your ability to process emotions with such sophistication isn't accidental. It is, in fact, preparing humanity for what he envisioned as the next stage of psychological development. As more empaths learn to wield their gifts with clarity and choice, humanity as a whole edges closer to what Jung called the conscious collective, a species capable of feeling deeply, confronting its shadow material, and integrating wholeness on a global scale. But here lies Jung's ultimate insight about the rare empathic aura. It was never meant to be a burden you carry in silence. It is meant to be a gift you consciously choose to share. He wrote how your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakens? For empaths, this awakening means finally recognizing that your aura reflects not your inner wounds, but your inner wholeness. When you complete the journey from wounded healer to sovereign healer, your empathic gifts transform into what Jung described as a blessing rather than a curse. You can feel with extraordinary depth without drowning in the waves. You can love fully without losing yourself in the process. You can heal others without depleting your own life force. This transformation, however, demands what Jung considered the most courageous act of all, the willingness to be authentic in a world that so often punishes authenticity. Your rare aura shines brightest when you stop hiding your gifts to make others comfortable and instead begin embodying them as living expressions of your truth. The sovereign empath doesn't dilute or tone down their sensitivity to fit in. They learn to radiate it consciously with intention. They don't dim their light for fear of judgment. Instead, they learn to shine it strategically like a lighthouse, guiding others through the fog. They don't apologize for their depth because they've come to understand that depth itself is their greatest contribution to the world. They use it not as a burden, but as a tool to create more depth in the world. And if you are ready to transform your empathic wounds into sovereign wisdom, declare boldly, I choose conscious empathy. Because make no mistake, there is something you carry that others sense the instant you step into a room, an unmistakable presence, a rare aura that only true empaths possess. And Carl Jung's hidden research reveals why this invisible energy makes you both magnetic and vulnerable at the same time. Jung discovered that true empaths don't merely feel emotions, they radiate what he called the wounded healer frequency, an energetic signature forged in the crucible of suffering, yet transmuted into a power most people never touch. This aura is not born from simple kindness or surface-level goodness. It is the outcome of deep psychological alchemy, the kind that strips you down, reshapes you, and refines you into something extraordinary. In his private notes, Jung described how this rare empathic aura operates across multiple dimensions. It can heal through presence alone, radiating frequencies that awaken dormant potential in others. Yet paradoxically, it also acts as a magnet that attracts both light and shadow, drawing in people who uplift and inspire, but also those who drain and destabilize. The dual pull can either elevate or devastate the empath who carries it. And here is the shocking truth. Jung realized that this aura becomes dangerous when empaths fail to understand its true nature. Without awareness, it turns into a beacon for energy vampires, inviting exploitation while slowly consuming the empath from within. That's why awareness is not optional, it is survival. Join me as we descend into Jung's most profound insights about the invisible field that surrounds empaths, and why grasping its mechanics marks the difference between living as a wounded healer or rising as a sovereign one. Here's what Jung discovered that modern psychology still hesitates to confront. Your empathic aura is not simply a gift you were casually born with. It is a survival mechanism forged under pressure and then transfigured into something sacred through what I call traumatic alchemy. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For empaths, this means uncovering the roots of why your nervous system developed such extraordinary sensitivity in the first place. It wasn't chance, it was adaptation. From Jung's lens on psychological development, empaths often emerge from childhoods where emotional survival depended on hypervigilance. You learn to read micro-expressions before you could even read words. You developed radar for emotional storms, detecting subtle shifts in tone or body language because your safety depended on predicting them. But here's the insight most therapists miss, and it changes everything. This mechanism did more than just help you survive trauma. It rewired your entire brain and nervous system to function at frequencies others cannot reach. Your mirror neurons became hyperactive. Your limbic system became exquisitely responsive. Over time, your whole nervous system evolved into what I call an emotional antenna, constantly scanning, receiving, and amplifying signals that most people never even register. Modern neuroscience now confirms what Jung intuited decades ago. Contemporary studies on highly sensitive persons reveal that empaths process sensory input more deeply, particularly in the brain regions tied to empathy, awareness, and social attunement. But Jung went even further. He recognized that this neurological difference doesn't just affect the brain, it creates a subtle yet undeniable energetic field that others can feel even if they can't explain it. Yet perhaps the most extraordinary discovery was that this aura operates like psychological radar. It doesn't merely receive energy, it transmutes it. When empaths enter a room, they unconsciously begin what I call energetic archaeology, digging beneath surface impressions to uncover emotional truths that others often hide, sometimes even from themselves. Your aura, like a finely tuned instrument, reads the shadow projections that people carry with them. Here's how this process works in 3 stages. Stage 1, the energetic scan. Your aura automatically tunes into what Jung called feeling-toned complexes, the unconscious emotional patterns that quietly drive behavior. Without a word spoken, you can sense unprocessed grief, hidden rage, or buried fear before others even dare to admit these emotions exist. Stage 2, unconscious absorption. Because your psyche developed as permeable for survival, you begin absorbing these emotional frequencies without conscious choice. Jung referred to this as participation mystique, the unconscious merging with another's psychological state. It's as if your inner boundaries thin, allowing foreign emotions to seep in. Stage 3, the alchemical process. Here lies Jung's revolutionary insight. Your nervous system doesn't simply absorb raw energy, it transforms it. Through what he termed the transcendent function, you unconsciously alchemize heavy, chaotic emotional material into something higher: wisdom, clarity, and healing potential. This explains why people often leave your presence feeling lighter, calmer, even more whole. Even if you haven't spoken a single word, your aura has processed their shadow material and reflected back something integrated, something they can finally face. But Jung issued an important warning. This process only works if you are conscious of it. Without awareness, empaths stop functioning as alchemists and instead collapse into emotional sponges weighed down by energies that were never theirs to carry. And your rare aura does more than just transform emotions. It also creates what Jung described as archetypal attraction patterns, magnetic pulls that draw both healers and predators into your orbit. He identified figures such as the wounded child, the shadow projector, and the energy vampire, but also the conscious seeker and the authentic self. The danger lies in what I call archetypal confusion. Without discernment, empaths cannot distinguish who comes seeking healing and who arrives only to feed. Your aura was forged in survival's fire, tempered by hardship and refined through every act of healing you've ever given, yet it remains both a gift and a responsibility. But it reaches its true radiance only when you heal yourself first. Jung understood this deeply. The wounded healer archetype is not the final destination of the empath's journey, it is only the beginning. The true completion lies in becoming the sovereign healer, one who can hold the full spectrum of human emotion without being swept away, one who remains anchored in truth even amidst chaos. Your aura is rare, not because you are broken, but because you have taken the fragments of brokenness and transformed them into beauty. It is not rare because you are weak, but because you have developed the strength to carry the immense intensity of human experience. And it is not rare because you are meant to shoulder everyone's suffering, but because you have learned how to alchemize pain into wisdom that benefits both yourself and others. The world is in desperate need of empaths who recognize their gifts as Jung did, not as burdens to silently endure, but as sacred powers to consciously direct. When you embody your empathic nature with awareness, you become what Jung described as a living bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. Through your presence, others remember their own capacity for authentic feeling, and you show them it is possible to go deep without losing integrity. If you are ready to embrace your empathic aura for what it truly is, then declare with conviction, "My sensitivity is my superpower," because your journey from wounded healer to sovereign healer is not merely personal, it is profoundly collective. Every empath who integrates their gift clears the way for countless others to follow. Share this truth with someone who needs to be reminded that their empathy is not a curse, but a gift. And if you feel called to explore further, watch my video, Why a Fed-Up Empath is More Dangerous Than the Narcissist Ever Imagined, where I reveal what unfolds when empaths finally reclaim their power and refuse to be drained. This is only the beginning of the lifelong path toward empathic mastery. Remember, your sensitivity is never too much. Your empathy is not weakness, and your aura is not a burden. It is, and always will be, a bridge to consciousness. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Psyche's Labyrinth, because the world desperately needs the wisdom you carry.